Hey guys, it's Connor here from Connor O'Shea Fitness. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to improve the basics and also how to overcome boredom when it comes to your training while staying on the same movements for longer periods of time. Now, the longer I train and the more I talk to people at much higher levels than me with experience in coaching and with their own personal abilities, the more apparent it becomes that all of these people got to where they're at and continue to progress by spending lots of time on the basic patterns. And according to Dan John, there are 5 fundamental patterns that we generally work on, and that's a squat, a hinge, a push, a pull, and a core exercise. And this is kind of a good thing to focus on when you're looking at where your training is at with regards to balance. So if you're doing a program and you've completely eliminated your legs, we'll say, or your pulling patterns or your core patterns, you know that that's something you should probably include in your program. But more on that in another video. In today, I just want to talk about how we can make you continue getting progress with your training whilst focusing heavily on the basics. And with my own personal clients and online clients, I basically will program for them using these 5 movement patterns. And imagine each pattern is like a ladder with different rungs on the ladder. And as they progress along the pattern, they go up further along the ladder. So the more advanced people will be up closer to the top of the ladder, the deconditioned beginners will be at the bottom, and then some people will be at different levels of each pattern depending on where they're at, where their strengths and weaknesses are in their body. So an example I'm going to use today is the push-up. Probably you watching the video have done push-ups in the past. Most people have done push-ups. But most people do push-ups incorrectly with poor form and not in a way that's sustainable for your shoulders and your elbows and your wrists. So getting really good at the basics, and the number one fundamental rule to abide by when it comes to building strength and getting better at the basics is getting away from chasing repetitions and focusing on doing stuff for time. So let's say instead of doing 3 sets of 8 reps, you'll do 3 sets of 30 seconds. And the reason we get away from this rep range is because when we start chasing reps or hitting a certain number of reps, we will sacrifice form and technique and what feels good or not good for your body based on where you're at for that day. When we focus on time, you've taken reps out of the equation, and you'll just focus on doing it as well as you can. So that's the first thing. The second thing you want to focus on is slowing the movement down a lot. Okay, so there's definitely a place for explosive movements, any sort of plyometric movements. It can be really beneficial for certain people depending on their goals, depending on their age, depending on many different things. But if you're trying to master movements and getting good at a certain movement, it's best to do it slow and controlled first. And when you do something slow and controlled, you can pay attention to what you're doing in the moment. When you're doing something very, very quickly, you have to be a lot more experienced to execute something quickly over a course of repetitions. So today I'm going to talk about the push-up, how you can scale the push-up from 3 different variations of it, and then also how to slow it down and how to own the movement, because if you can get really good at the progressions I'm going to show you today, you're going to find it a lot easier to get more advanced skills along that pushing variant. So, for all clients, basically, beginners especially, we start off the knees, but if you've been doing push-ups for years and you consider yourself very, very good at doing push-ups, that's great. But if you find this challenging, then you might have been doing them incorrectly. Okay, so from here off the knees, you're going to tuck the tailbone under, push the ground away, and then elbow pits rotate forwards, and you're going to lower yourself down towards the ground. Elbows hug your ribs. Now, depending on how strong or conditioned you are, you mightn't be able to go all the way down. So initially you might just do a 1/4 rep or even a 1/2 rep. So that's the first variation of the push-up. From there, we're going to go to a push-up, a full rep down, and then you're going to use your knees to come back up. Again, you can do a quarter, half, or 3/4 rep for this as well. And then your last option is your full push-up. Start by pushing the ground away, contract the quads, squeeze the glutes, and then from here, you're going to lower yourself down under control, and then slow and controlled, you're going to come all the way back up. Now, that's a tough variation of an actual push-up. You might be able to do 10 or 20 regular push-ups, but I guarantee you if you haven't done this variation before, even 1 rep is going to be challenging for you. Now, the reason that I like to get clients to do things slowly is that if you just think about the push-up and the way a lot of people do push-ups initially, they will drop down into the push-up and then they'll use a bit of explosive force, and then momentum will get them back up. So this entire area generally is just gravity and momentum, and you're not actually building strength or motor control or coordination in this area. So it's like your muscles are actually switched off in this area. Now, over the course of weeks, months, and years, all of a sudden you've left a huge amount of strength development on the table. And that's where, you know, when you are trying to go up the rungs of the ladder, you're going to find that from getting, you know, to a full push-up to like a ring push-up or going into like planche territory, the jump is going to be much too big for you because you haven't actually mastered the basic push-up yet. And what I mean by that is at every point of the push-up, lowering yourself down, you own that position. So you can stop at any point in the lowering phase, at the bottom and at the way up, and you still own that position in the push-up. When you're able to do that, you know, very well, then you're going to find it a lot easier to progress with the more advanced progressions of the pushing pattern. So an example is when I'm doing this push-up, you know, at any point, and a good drill you can do, you know, with a trainer or with your friend is they'll just say stop at any point. So, you know, we can stop here, and then stop here, and then stop here at the bottom. And then we really want to use momentum on the way up, but we want to avoid that. Stop, stop, and all the way up. So that makes the movement so much harder, but the strength developments you're going to gain from doing it that way is going to be far superior to doing, you know, sets of 50 or 100 push-ups, because you're not leaving anything on the table. Everything is engaged all the time. So that's just a quick video, guys, on how to really build transferable strength in very, very basic movements. You find that if you kind of implement this type of push-up technique, you know, for your next 4 to 8 week cycle, you're going to find that you've gotten a lot stronger than you probably would have by just pumping out more reps of what you've been doing for years. Also with this technique, what I really like about slowing things down is I'm much more aware of where everything is. So if you're doing, you know, higher reps, you know, the first 5 or 6 reps, everything's looking good. And then it's just a case of like self-awareness. As you're getting tired, your form, everything is just going to be not as engaged. It's going to be harder to keep everything locked in place the way you would like it to when you're doing higher repetition work, unless you're very, very conditioned and very used to push-ups. So that's just some techniques and tips today, guys. Staying with the very basic fundamentals. There's nothing wrong with progressing further along the ladder and trying new things out, but you always need to come back to the basics and go deeper with them. So, you know, even if what I showed you today is beyond your scope, you know that this is something you can keep coming back to, refining and getting stronger with this pressing pattern. So I hope you enjoyed the information, and if you would like to ask any further questions, you can comment.